Well, hello there. I have to admit, Gene and Roger lied to everyone. We said we were going to do either Sputnik or New Year's Evil, but we're actually doing Green Room today.
That's right, a totally different movie.
Right. Two of our friends have flown in for the holidays,
Yes.
Sarah and David, and they said, hey, you got a podcast? We'd love to be on it. What's it about? I said, well, you got to watch some sort of nasty little movie. And they're
You
like,
have to watch some horror movie.
yeah, we don't really necessarily want to do that, but we'll try Green Room. So that's the movie
Okay.
we're doing today. Gene, initial thoughts on Green Room?
All right, Green Room. It came out in 2016. It's a A24 film distribution, and then I've talked about A24 before, but I really like this film distribution company. They really give directors freedom. And a lot of these A24 movies, just if you're looking for just great entertainment, these movies just don't mess around. And Green Room is one of those for sure. If you want something that'll, kind of make you feel uneasy in your skin, Green Room is it for sure. So I really like this movie. Hope our guests liked it as well.
Well, and the initial storyline of this, right, is a punk band.
Yeah,
They're kind
a
of
great
traveling
idea.
around.
A punk band
They end up doing
does a concert at a
neo-Nazi compound.
Yes.
And they
Neo-Nazi.
inadvertently witness a murder, and then they become kind of trapped in this compound, fending off a bunch of crazed neo-Nazis who want to kill them.
Yes.
David, welcome to the show. What were your thoughts on this film?
Yeah, thank you for having me. This
It's great to have you, David and Sarah.
Thanks. Yeah, something completely new and different for me. But
Yeah.
my initial thoughts of the movie is that it kind of went from 0 to 101 in matter of like the first 15 minutes of the whole thing. And
Right, I would agree. I think
So-
there's one point where all of a sudden the movie, it transforms itself. And we could talk about that, yeah?
Yeah,
'Cause we'll probably,
but it felt, I guess my initial thoughts were like the amount of attention to all of the shots and the coloration. So all of the color of the movie was very well orchestrated. So you kind of had a whole bunch of like a progression of color themes throughout
Yes.
it.
Right.
It definitely followed an arc that way. So.
And
that was
Sarah,
fun.
my understanding is you're a huge horror film fan and couldn't wait to watch Green Room. What
That
are your
is
thoughts?
not true. My thoughts is that we got the title screen open before we went to play the movie, and it was not a movie I would have picked to watch ever.
Oh, so you're
But-
on your own? You wouldn't have done
No,
that?
and I don't think so.
With your
No.
mom? And okay.
No, I don't
And so
think
what
so.
what
Not
are
this
what are
one.
some
Yeah.
of your initial thoughts?
So my initial thoughts are it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. It was gory, but there weren't like a lot of jumping points, and that's what I associate with horror movies is like
jump
things
scares.
coming out. Exactly,
all
yeah.
right.
So and there was gore that progressively became more and more apparent as the show went on.
Yes.
Right, and I think that's one of the interesting. We had a kind of a brief conversation about does this fit within horror? Because it isn't necessarily a movie that you would just, oh yeah, that's a horror film, Green Room. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Right.
But there is absolutely, it fits within the realm of
Horror
horror.
elements for sure. It's like
And-
the disfiguration of the human form. Absolutely. Lots of blood, bad things happen to people. Does the movie kind of creep you out? And yeah, I think so. It makes you think about our society. There's definitely some really super dark themes in this movie that are very relevant that we're seeing in our society today. And so, yeah,
Well, and I think
it should creep you out.
Patrick Stewart is in this film, and I don't think people think of Patrick Stewart as the head of some neo-Nazi compound. What were your thoughts, Sarah, of his performance?
This is not Star Trek Patrick Stewart.
Captain Picard,
This
not.
is not. Yeah, it's a very different character that he played.
Right,
for
he's
sure.
very
But
manipulative.
still kind of the head guy in charge, like moving the strings behind the scenes, sending other people to do
Yeah.
some of the work.
Well, and were you big on the original Star Trek? Did you ever see Mirror Mirror, where there was the evil Spock and the evil Kirk?
This is
Maybe
way
this
before
was
Patrick.
like maybe this was Mirror Mirror for him, and it's he's now just the evil.
I kind of like
Captain
what
Picard.
Sarah was just saying because as Captain Picard, he is clearly, is the dominant personality on the Enterprise for sure. And he runs the show, but in the same way here in Green Room, he's the dominant personality, and he runs that neo-Nazi compound.
Yeah.
Everyone reveres him and looks up to him, and they do what he says.
And does whatever he says.
Yeah, and without question.
Yeah, there were a
Yeah.
number of scenes where the guys that were carrying out the deeds were constantly saying like, "Oh, don't let Darcy know. Don't like, oh, Darcy's
Right.
going to be really furious or mad or just."
Yeah.
Well,
Well-
everybody kind of had that guy as the figurehead.
Yeah, and
Right.
even one of the few humorous parts of the film, right, is when they're going into the green room to get set up to do their set for the musical number. They make a big point about not blocking the stuff off because of the fire thing, and Darcy hates, doesn't want to mess up any fire codes. And then later he is actually pointing out, hey, that shouldn't be there. Do you
Right,
remember
right.
that? Did you
Yep,
catch
I
that? So
remember
he's
that.
like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
He's like this by the book kind of guy, but he's super evil about his by the bookness.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, this murder had happened, and these terrible things are going down. But he's like, "You can't put that there; it's blocking the fire code." What's up with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the first things that just kind of pops out at you almost just as almost a non sequitur. It just like happens, and you're like, what's the point of that? And then you totally learn about this guy's personality later on. You're thinking, that's why there was attention drawn to it.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things, I'm going to go off on a tiny bit of a tangent here. I really liked the beginning part of this movie where you were getting introduced to the punk band that were traveling around. And the reason I really enjoyed that is it's true to life. There's a great documentary called The Decline of Western Civilization. I don't know if anyone at this table has seen it, but it's about
Haven't seen it.
about the early 80s punk scene in Los Angeles. And there's a great sequence in there where those band members of Black Flag are talking about having to do exactly what these characters
Really?
are
Siphon
doing.
gasoline?
Siphoning gas. We're just crashing at people's places because we don't have a place to live. In the documentary,
They're living in their van.
right. They're living in
Yeah.
their cars, and these guys were in the documentary, they're living in some abandoned church for a while and all this stuff. And so I loved how they really set that as, no, this is real, because I've seen it before. And so you kind of get into that character where, yeah, you would potentially end up opening in some neo-Nazi compound because you're just trying to get a gig anywhere.
Yeah, because got a gig from their friend Tad.
Good old
Yeah,
Tad.
Tad.
My
Yeah,
goodness,
with guy,
that guy.
yeah, the guy with the hair. Yeah, and
Well, keeps a clean house,
oh yeah, his
House
house
that
was very
part.
nice, and he had a job. Yeah. But his friend Tad gave him a gig, and they were a big whopping $88 for their gig. Yeah, and then Tad said that he had another gig for them, but they would earn a whole $350. And so yeah, they're there.
They're there.
They're going.
Yeah. And Sarah, at a certain point in this film, it starts becoming gruesomely violent. I'm referring to like when the one character's arm gets horribly mutilated and things like that. Where were you at? Are you okay with that level of graphic violence? What were your thoughts when that started happening?
Absolutely not. She is
Yeah.
not okay with it.
Yeah, it's not my style. I think what bothered me more than like seeing the bloody arm was the effect of, oh, let's go get the duct tape and just tape the arm back up and he'll be fine for the rest of the movie. And then the other gal does that with her leg. Like
Yeah,
she
no,
does,
it-
it's
Right,
It
Emily.
almost became a theme, like, oh, gotta get the duct tape, like almost video game, like found duct tape plus 10 XP or something. Like go back to
Well,
it.
I love that stuff because in college I had this Jeep, right, in college, and that thing was held together by duct tape.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Of
I
course.
just used duct tape for everything.
But
I think it was actually on the exhaust system at one point.
And I think
yeah.
in this movie, and a lot of horror movies, you see this kind of body mutilation that is then trying to be resolved in unconventional means. Where
Right.
all you've
Yeah.
got is the duct tape, so we got to wrap it up and
well,
all this other
bandages
stuff.
you have to wrap it up, put pressure on somebody.
Yeah.
There's duct tape. Why not do it?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
and then you, David, you mentioned the color scheme earlier, and that is a great point because that director, I think, purposely was designing the color schemes for a specific effect. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess from my perspective, it kind of bookended it almost. So you see a lot of that kind of color work in I'm using the completely incorrect terminology for that. What would you call that? Color grading.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of it in something like Ozark. All it is dark, and all it is ominous. And so you see directors and movie makers and all that kind of stuff using that as a really heavy tool. But in this one, it was really cool, again, because of the book ending. You open up with these really kind of vivid, vibrant colors as, it's the beginning of a new day, but then you see them
Or they
waking
were
up from a
crashed in a
very clear
cornfield.
car crash into a cornfield sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I
But-
think he had just fallen asleep and they ran into the cornfield.
Yeah,
'Cause the car
everybody
wasn't
was.
wrecked or anything.
It seemed like everybody was asleep or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
but yeah, you saw all of that, and you saw the landscape and the coastline, the really pretty Oregon coast, and all of those shots. If you would have just plucked that out of the movie, you would see that as just a pretty spectacular.
The beginning of
Scene.
an indie film.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Oh,
beginning
yeah.
of a good indie film.
Yeah, romantic
you know?
comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the initial scooter shot, what it was like a little motorized bike thing, or it was just a bike, and he was just pedaling along. They were
Yeah, with the
off to
girl.
get-
Yeah.
with the girl. It was like, oh, this is just so indie, and but it kept on progressing darker and darker and darker as you got to the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
The last kind of bright shot was in I think it was a restaurant, a Mexican restaurant or something, where one of their gigs was with Tad. But
Yeah, that's one where they got like $80.
yeah,
They got hardly
but-
anything, like
yeah,
$6
just-
a piece.
Yeah, and as soon as they stuff started kind of going down, it was only getting even still darker, and then it kind of just progressed into back to the lighter colors, the more vivid colors
Yeah,
towards
once-
the end.
Once there was kind of a resolution towards the movie.
Yeah, like
Yeah, it started
as
to get
soon as there
brighter,
was,
sure.
yeah, as soon as there was resolution,
good.
if you want to call it that. But they kind of brought it back to the beginning of new day, here we go.
Right. They were
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
using green filters and green lights, of course,
heavily
in
greens.
the compound.
Right. It's Oregon, a lot of forest, shot in the forest, definitely. So it's very scenic, as Sarah, you said. Yeah, very scenic, kind of like really nice settings. And yeah, towards the middle of the movie where it was really desperate for the guys, where they were trapped in the room and they didn't know if they would survive. Yeah, it was pretty dark.
Yeah.
It's a bad night for them.
Yeah, it was a
'Cause
bad
the movie
night.
takes time over, morning, day, evening, back to morning again. Like, it's
Yeah,
actually a very
yeah.
short period of time, but lots of stuff went wrong.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff, yes.
And did you feel on edge at all? Were you identifying at all with any of the characters trapped inside the green room?
I can't say I've been in that kind of situation before.
I'm glad to hear that.
Well,
No.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
No, I guess that didn't bother me. I think my thing was it seemed like a very simplistic thing to get them involved with that whole situation by, oh, I forgot my phone. I need to go back and get my phone, which maybe that's a different social commentary there. But then they end up trapped in this room. And a kind of an underlying subplot that I don't think really surfaces as much as
Oh,
maybe was
subplot,
intended
nice.
was the whole heroin subplot with you have this secret
Right.
room. Obviously, there's some maybe protection of trying to get people from figuring out that that's what's happening in this compound or underneath this theater.
I actually, Sarah, I love that point with the addition of the heroin going on, because that does, really they were trying to, I think, heighten why this Patrick Stewart character is so intent on just slaughtering all of these people.
They
right?
can't know.
They can't know what we're really doing
Yeah, what
here.
we're really doing. And the heroin was kind of it laid into some of the, I think, the funding sources for them.
Exactly.
And he was using the heroin because he wanted to maybe frame those guys, because they had certain marks on them, and so that if they were found, those marks would be traceable. So I think he was trying to frame.
Well, and his power is so absolute in that compound. At one point, because the Anton Yelchin character, I can't remember
Pat.
his name, Pat, he calls the cops. He's on that cell phone. He's calling the police, so the police are coming. Patrick Stewart then tells two of his followers, "Hey, you guys got to stab each other." And
Well, I love it. I love this
Escape.
part because, Pat,
Yeah.
he calls the phone after witnessing the murder, and then he calls and he says, I wrote this down because I thought it was interesting. He said, "I need two true believers," and so then two
Wow.
true believers came, and the solution to, because the cops are coming, and there has to be somebody that's stabbed, and so they stab each other, or one actually stabs the other.
Yeah.
So there is a stab wound. Of course, they make up a story, and the police arrive, and there they are. There's a stabbing. It
Right,
really
and
happened.
I
And here you
liked
go.
that, and I liked also the whole red shoelace thing.
The red
And so
shoelace,
you have this hierarchy within your own little group of skinheads,
Right.
where you want to earn those red shoelaces, and so there was more than one scene where Patrick Stewart was like, "Yeah, you want the red shoelaces? This is, I'll give them to you if you do this or that or
Right.
the next thing."
I thought it was interesting though because he had, on one hand, he had unquestioned power, but the whole motive behind the murder was that this woman that had been murdered, her and her boyfriend, his name was Daniel, they actually were planning on leaving the compound, and then another person found out about it and then killed her. She was Emily. Her name was Emily, and so they were planning on leaving and escaping, without telling anybody. So here he is, Patrick Stewart's character, Darcy. Again, he has unquestioned power, but in a way he kind of doesn't. So it's because some people are there scheming to get out.
Right, but I think he's got so much power that he's going to solve the problem by massacring a whole bunch of people, right? And I mean,
Right,
and
because the
that's-
crime had happened, he has got to cover it,
And
right?
so he's going to just go down that road because he does discover their attempt to leave. He gets that bat. Hey, this bat that's in this
Right.
plastic bag that
Right.
should have been disposed of a long time
Long
ago.
time ago.
This guy was going to maybe turn me in, and all of that kind of stuff. So. The other thing I really want to point out about this movie that I really enjoyed is the music. One of the things that I find interesting about hardcore punk and this
And I thought it was like, I knew you'd like this
yeah.
because you're a Slayer fan, is that right?
Right, and that's what I want to talk
Yep.
about, because not only do you have songs from Fear and from the Dead Kennedys, which are well-known, famous hardcore punk bands, but later on in the film it segues into you're hearing songs from Slayer, you're hearing songs from Obituary, and these kind of thrash metal, death metal kind of bands. And I loved how they put that in there, because that is the true natural progression of what happened to hardcore punk. Is you had hardcore punk, which was anybody who's got an instrument, even if you know how to play it or not, you can do hardcore punk.
Yeah,
right?
and
was
those guys sounded like that because were they
Exactly.
musical at all?
right. And so it,
No,
Debatable.
they were just up there screaming.
And so it was this natural progression where, okay, we've got this aggression that we want to share with the world. It's all this unjust stuff. But then it progressed slowly into this thrash metal, which was really well-trained musicians saying the same message, but a little harder, a little faster. And then that progressed into death metal. And that's exactly how this movie goes
Nice.
with that progression. And I really loved that. So I really liked how this director clearly understands punk and appears to understand skinheads, which is a little questionable, but certainly understood how that progression, that natural progression of the original hardcore punk movement has ended up being really death metal at this point. And so
Yeah.
I really love that. I don't know, Sarah, where were you at with the death metal stuff?
It's not really my favorite genre of music.
Yeah.
That's
I
for sure.
kinda
but
like-
it was. I think it added a cinematic element.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of explained maybe some of the character personalities, how they interacted with each other,
Right,
their, I guess, relationship with how do we get out of this situation. Like I think it fit. It wouldn't have worked if it was like.
A classical string quartet.
No,
Right, well,
they
and-
would have gone, like
Yeah.
it's a completely
And-
different personality set going against like how do we solve
It's
these
interesting
issues?
because if you know the names of the songs that are being played, they are actually focused on the action that is happening. Slayer comes on, and the song that's being played is War Ensemble, when the skinheads are all getting ready to do their final assault on the green room to kill the last two people. right. And
Ah.
then like
Oh, Roger, only you would
Okay.
notice that.
and then like
That's awesome.
yeah, and then there was the Nazi punk song that they sang kind of
At the beginning,
as,
because
as
they
a
sang
joke to do to them.
it because they're skinheads,
Right. And so,
neo-Nazis.
yeah, so if you really dig deep into that, there's a message there that the director put in with just the titles of the songs. So it was pretty cool. But
That is cool.
Something
Yeah.
that I really appreciated too about the music aspect is that I wasn't offended by them fake playing. Like, you know, that, I mean, I assume that none of them were really, you know, fully trained musicians and whatnot. But when you watched them, they weren't making movements that would really tip you off and just immediately and just be blatantly incorrect. And that was really kind of interesting to me, because most of the time in any movie that involves music or somebody playing music, you're like, wow, that's not that note, or no, that drummer's just flailing and there's nothing else going on.
Right.
It just doesn't match even what they're doing. But that time it didn't even pop out at me.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because I think I read a little bit ago, maybe a year ago, that director purposely wanted his performers to appear that they actually knew what they were doing with the musical instruments. So he probably put them through a week or two of trials.
But not too much. You can tell that they were still.
Well, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
the bass guy was definitely not hitting everything perfectly, but you can
Yeah.
always tell when the drummer's not
Oh,
really doing
yeah.
what they're supposed to, you know?
It
Yeah.
wasn't so bad. It was distracting
Right.
for
Yeah,
the viewer.
it just it didn't pull away necessarily from the take away from.
But
the
it kind of
moment.
fit though, right? Because them playing badly was kind of in a way that's kind of the point, right?
That's the ultimate
Yeah.
hardcore punk band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want it to be all choreographed, and you know they're not going to a Queen concert.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, did you think there was any underlying message here to learn, or anything to learn from this movie? What is the director trying to tell us here?
Well, you know, I guess with the cell phone thing, just don't leave your cell phone.
Yeah.
This could have all been avoided
But you know, and Sarah, you brought up
on
this
a
point.
lighthearted surface level. Yeah.
Yeah, but you brought up this point about that maybe seemed unrealistic to you, that they went back to look for the cell phone and then they found this horrific event. But I think that's in a way that's life though, right? Because like,
That's true.
how does the FBI and law enforcement catch all these serial killers and just ordinary traffic stops? That's how they catch them. And how often do we forget phones, and how many times have we done that? And we go back, or we do things like that, or which kind of are illogical, but they happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it would have been more realistic if it was just the cell phone charger.
No.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
the cell. Yeah, I need the charger.
Yeah.
I guess another underlying lesson too was it Tad? Was that his name? The booking agent for this movie.
the booking agent.
It's
yeah,
like
love it.
maybe he wasn't a great person to keep getting gigs from after the first experience and the first concert. Because then there was that scene where later on he's vacuuming, and it tied back to the comment of so and so's coming, like I need to go clean my house. Later in the movie, after they've had this horrific experience, like stuck in this club,
There he is vacuuming.
he's there vacuuming, getting ready, like his life's not affected.
Right.
Who knows the relationship
Yeah.
between him and those other, the club, but his life has not been impacted by the events of the last 12
Right.
hours.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
maybe
well-
that's another takeaway, like, be careful who you're getting gigs
Who
from.
you're hanging out with.
Yeah, if you're in a band, you should get a respectable agent. Maybe.
Don't go playing gigs at a skinhead compound.
Right. Well, I don't think they knew that they were going to a skinhead
Well,
compound.
they saw the headliner band though, and they kind of
Oh, they
looked
did,
at
yeah.
that and they
Some
said,
clues.
"Are you kidding me?" Like,
There's
Yeah.
the Confederate flag. There were like some other clues when they walked in, like, it's just a gig. Like, let's just get through this.
Yeah,
we
I
need
think
the
they
money
wanted
for
the
gas.
they were
$350.
pretty desperate for
Yeah,
the money.
no,
Yeah,
and
they
that's
were desperate,
that
for
to
sure.
me was that standard
That's
hardcore punk band is. There's $350. I don't care who I'm playing for.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go do it, because they knew, and you're right, Sarah. When they saw that headliner, they knew that headliner was a skinhead neo-Nazi
Right.
band,
Yeah.
and so they knew what they were getting into. But it was the money part.
No, they wanted the money
You know,
because
yeah.
they were poor. They were siphoning gas. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and even when they had the courage, I guess, or stupidity to sing that initial song they sang, which is a complete denigration of the entire skinhead movement. They sang it anyway.
Right,
you know?
right. Yeah.
And then the getting spit on by the audience, that is hardcore
Audience
punk
members
for a
Yeah, you
throwing
know,
the beer
just gotta
cans.
stick up for what you believe in, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So
But then it kind of alluded, there was that next montage of people like, like dancing to the music. Like maybe they were all enjoying the concert after that point, or transcended
Yeah, I
just the
think-
music, not the lyrics or something.
absolutely. Well, and that's the thing, right? Because the whole thing with hardcore punk is you rile that audience up. What better way to rile up a bunch of skinheads than to play that particular song and then immediately segue into the more headbanging, mosh pitting kind of stuff.
Right,
you
right.
know?
Because I think that's what the audience was expecting, and the first song threw them off. But then quickly they went to the next song, and then kind of gave them what they wanted, and they were into it,
Yeah,
just
no,
like that.
Had they not gone back for the cell phone, they would have been on their way with their $350.
Right, and they would have been fine. Well, there wouldn't have been a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Would've
true.
And hey, hardcore punk band goes and plays a gig at a skinhead compound, and now they're on to another gig.
Yeah, yeah.
End of movie.
Exactly.
But-
I don't know. I found a theme like you were talking about bigger ideas. It just kind of hit me through this whole thing is that the whole Darcy Patrick Stewart character, because he's what keeps that compound together, and it just seems like what would society look like without any laws, or without any governing principles. It would look like that. It would look like a skinhead compound. It would look like it would be a cult, where people are drawn together and kept together by the cult of personality. And then also, our society, we have laws and the police, or we've kind of like our current society, we've given up violence. We have allowed the police to take over the role of perpetrating or enacting violence. That goes to the police, in our society. But what if society falls apart? Then what happens to violence? Well, violence comes back to us, and so without laws, we would have a very violent society. And I think this movie really touches on that, really gets into that.
I think the compound, this skinhead compound, could be traded out with any compound from the Walking Dead TV show.
Oh,
or
yeah,
any,
any of those,
of
yeah.
those types of things. Where
Yeah, they touched on
society
that
has
theme
kind
as
of
well.
collapsed a little bit, and you've got
Right.
this person taking charge, and he's got his own understanding of what's right and wrong.
Yeah,
But really, it's about self-preservation for him, too. I looked at the Patrick Stewart character as kind of this dictator almost, where really my survival's the only thing that really matters, because towards the end of the movie, he's like, yeah, we got to clean this up. We're probably going to burn this building down now and all of this other stuff just to protect him,
And then he
what-
does.
Yeah.
And then,
And what's interesting too is that the two spoiler remaining characters, Pat and the other remaining gal, they kind of had to fall in line with that very anarchy kind of like, just fighting for your life sort of mentality, and that's what got them through eventually.
yes.
So just when you fall into that world where like lawlessness, where there's lawlessness, but there's the head guy dictator, the pull to basically match or mimic that kind of behavior is really, really strong, and to the extent of that might just be the only thing that gets you through, which is kind of scary. And
Well,
so
the survival of the fittest.
well, not
type
even that, just the
mentality.
survival of the most manipulative.
Right, it is Emily. Yeah, because I put a note here. Emily gets revenge.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and
But-
David, your point is right on. I mean, the director
Yeah.
clearly was going down that road, because he had
Yeah.
that whole sequence where Pat is telling that story about the paintball
paintball,
stuff.
yeah.
And then there was also the scene where they're earlier than that, where they're talking about breaking out of the green room and just battling their way out. And his character Pat says, "I'm just going to run." And so at that moment when he was telling that story, he realized, I can't just run anymore. I have to now match or be even more aggressive than these guys are.
Just
and then
be as sinister.
right, and then they
more.
do
Yeah.
their war paint, their face
Yeah,
paint,
they actually
and all that.
Pat and Emily, they put on war paint.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
they their last words before all that went down was, "Well, do you want to pretend this? What does it do? Pretend war? Want to pretend war?"
Yeah.
And they got into it.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was a conscious decision because remember they were sitting on a couch, and I wrote this down because Pat said, like there was a lull in the action, and they were sitting on a couch, and he said, shouldn't we be panicking? You know, and because they were just sitting there, and then Emily comes back. Her line next is, "Oh, I'm hungry," you know, and then they're thinking about it, and I think they make that conscious decision that they are going to match the level of violence that is around them, so that they can survive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
there's the comment, "Oh, they're real bullets." You know, they were talking about
Right,
paintballs
right.
versus, "Oh, these are real bullets."
These real
and
bullets.
you see that realization, and then the war paint, and then they're gonna, you know, then you're watching like, "Oh, maybe they're gonna make it out of here," kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like this movie because I think good horror movies they set up characters so you like them, and I like the beginning part that we talked about, getting to know the punk band.
Yep.
You know, because there was one character, her name Amber, she was on that bicycle, you know, at the beginning, and you know you like characters, you like some characters more than others, and you know she was a cool character, you know, and then when she meets her demise, you know,
Got
it's
bit.
like yeah, she's attacked and she's killed by a dog.
Yeah, those dogs.
Yeah,
That's
those dogs.
terrifying. But
Yeah.
then at the end, you see the little puppy side of the, you know, really
Of
mean,
the
terrifying
dog,
dog,
yes.
Oh, it's
come
still just a dog.
and put its little chin on its handler, like, "Oh, I'm sad that you're dead now." And you're like, "Oh, but that dog was so vicious, but oh, he's sad now."
Yeah,
And that was the most horrifying part for you.
No, it stuck out in my
yeah,
memory.
it did stick out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the duality of the dog.
Yes, because that was terrifying.
Well,
Yeah.
but I think what does that really do, though, right? It takes you back to how people are treated, how animals are treated. A dog can be the friendliest dog in the world if it's treated properly,
Right.
or it can be this maniacal killer. We see that in this compound where all of these people could have been much different than they were, but they're being
Right.
manipulated, and their biases are being played upon, and they're being turned into these evil people. But we meet two that aren't necessarily all that evil. The one that wants to escape and actually tries to help them for a bit.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah, the bartender guy.
and
yeah.
then
Emphasis on a bit.
Yeah.
Long.
Yes,
right,
yes.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was the other fellow who you thought was a super evil guy, but then at the end he's like, "No, I want to be arrested. I'm going to, you know, turn myself in for what I've
Right,
done here," and
right,
things like
yeah.
this. And so you kind of get them out of that realm of that world they've placed themselves in, and they like wake up. Oh, I'm not supposed to be this person. I'm not supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
And
It
so-
was kind of a waking up, wasn't it? Because that's almost what it looked like with everybody, every remaining character at the end. It was waking up. And even with the vacuum cleaner, just the look of absolute exasperation of like, I can't believe I'm still doing this. I can't believe I'm here. I'm vacuum. Like he's just going around cleaning up. And it's like, are you kidding me?
yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Sarah, I like the point about you brought up about the dog. Because one of my favorite parts of the movie is where the dog is just going home to his master, and he walks right by Emily.
Yeah,
And,
right by.
He walks right by Emily and Pat, and they are fully armed with guns that they've, you know, acquired. And they see this dog coming, and this killer, vicious dog. So what do? They point their guns at this dog, and they're just going to blast this thing. Because then they start clicking, but they're out of ammunition.
Yeah.
You know, and so the dog survives, and the dog goes and cuddles with his dead owner.
yeah, he was no
Yeah.
longer a threat, you know. So
Right, right.
And it
the
brought
dog
out,
lives.
like, it seems like in a good horror movie, there's a little bit of humor like that. Those little shining moments of like, oh, that's funny. That just they're ready to absolutely waste this dog and out of bullets. 'Cause
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course they are, but
Yeah.
they are still just beaten, you know, entirely focused on its demise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good storytelling too, because clearly, like, all the bad guys are dead. You know, Darcy is Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard. He's dead. You know, and so yeah, they've survived. They've made it. So this descending action for sure, and And the movie decides, it has a lighthearted element there. So it's pretty cool. I think it's great storytelling because it has, as an audience member, I think it draws you in,
Yeah,
Mhm.
it drew me in definitely because and also with the constant shots of the dog walking back in a direction, you're like, well, where is it going? Where is it heading? What's it gonna do? And because you see the bullet go through Darcy's head, and you're thinking, oh, that's it. Oh, no, it's not. That's not it. That can't just be it. And
Right.
you see the dog, and you're thinking, oh, that's what's coming up next. Oh, that's gonna be a thing, and oh, it's not. It's just a complete ramp down to the finish.
Yeah.
Right. Because easily your mind could have thought about is that, that they think that they've escaped, but this dog is still out. When this dog sees him, the dog's just going to get him.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, is this going to be Cujo or just
Yeah. Or one of those movies where you think that the protagonist has survived, but no, they haven't survived.
Yeah. Most of the movies we watch, where think it's over, but no, it's not over.
Yeah.
But no, this one just kind of ends.
Yeah, it did
Yeah.
end. Yeah.
And I was surprised, actually, that Patrick Stewart did not get a better send-off, being that he was such a vile person. Because really,
I mean, he got 3 shots in him.
But you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Where it
he
was
did.
like, once they get there and, he's turned his back on them and is trying to get away, he pulls out a gun, but then they've got him and they pop right through the head. But I would have thought there would have been maybe a little bit more to that, where maybe it's even like hand-to-hand combat between him and Anton Yelchin's character, or Yelchin's character.
There are great episodes in Star Trek where Picard is fighting Klingons hand to hand.
Well, and we could have even had the Star Trek music in there. Dun, 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 dun.
No, that's terrible. No, I thought it was appropriate.
Okay, I just usually
yeah.
when you've built up a character to be as evil as Patrick Stewart is, there's a much more aggressive ending to them, right?
Or maybe it just kind of makes it that much more realistic for you. It's just like, oh, and that's it. That's how a human can end in this story.
Yeah.
For me, it's not seeing him fall into a fiery pit and where it just, blood just gets spurted everywhere and just be entirely dramatic about it. I think the very short, fast-paced justice was very realistic to me.
Yeah.
It seemed like that. I mean, you think about even just a real-life police shootout. Once the shot is fired and it lands its mark, that's it.
It's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
Well, I thought it was interesting. I thought of it more as like a poetic justice kind of ending to his life, because he was setting everything up to frame this band. Like, they had come, run on the compound, were trying to do whatever. They were killing everybody. And so I thought he was trying to make it look like a self-defense bullet shootout, because there's a shot at the end, like his final shot ricochets off of the van or some kind of metal thing.
It does, yeah.
And so, but he was shot from the back. And so I remember when
Yeah.
David and I were watching it together, he said, oh, is this framing it for a self-defense shootout or self-defense wound? Maybe it's poetic justice that instead he missed his shot that he was trying to make. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
But he was setting everything up like it was going to be the band's fault that all of this
Right.
happened.
Right,
Because there was
exactly.
also the little shot of the siphoning, and the guy walks up and says, "No, this isn't how you siphon gas,"
Yeah.
and pulls it out. Like,
I
no,
wouldn't
you
have done
can't
it
do
that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and
Yeah,
I think too, the quick demise of Patrick Stewart's character could also just be a commentary on, you can be in your mind this big, powerful, strong guy who's controlling a bunch of people, but at the end of the day,
You're still human.
you're just a guy that can be taken out like anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a way it kind of parallels, modern events, or history even, because you see these dictators and stuff. How do they meet their end? Do they go out with a ferocious firefight? No, they usually go out with a whimper,
Yep.
because their surrounding structure has crumbled. And so, just like you said, what's left? Well, it's just them. They're just some guy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, David, anything else to talk about with Green Room?
I'm I'm glad I had another shot at horror, and I'm still not the biggest fan, but I can appreciate the art form, if I'm willing to call it that. Yeah, I'm willing to call it that. I appreciate the art form.
I appreciate you saying that because it
Yeah.
absolutely is an art form. And now, Sarah, again, I know you're a huge horror fan. Where does this rank on your list of horror films?
You know, it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. Again, I was thinking it was going to be like the jump scare kind of thing,
Right.
and it was not. So I guess after this movie experience, I would be willing to watch a similar movie in this
Let it be
genre.
known.
Let it be known.
known.
Awesome. That's
Well,
great.
and I'm wondering, what do you have a favorite horror film that you've seen?
No, I haven't
No.
seen enough
The
of
Little
them to
Mermaid?
be
Okay.
able to.
The Little Mermaid is pretty.
Well, that scared the hell out of me, that's for sure. Gene,
Well, you
any
got that-
final thoughts
that
on
Black
Green
Witch
Room?
character, right? In The Little Mermaid.
Oh, yeah. What is
Yeah.
her
You know,
name
I do
anyway?
have one other thought. I think
Oh,
we'd be
yeah.
remiss in not talking about the title of the movie, The Green Room,
Room, yeah.
and how they kept going back to this room that they initially were trying to get
Out of, yeah.
out of. They were trying to run away from it, and then it got to the place where they were always going back, like it was their safe space almost.
Yeah.
And
So that was kind of an interesting thought. I just thought we needed to add that in
No,
in the conversation.
No, it's a-
because
it's a
that
great
was
point,
an
yeah.
overarching
Can I
thing.
just say that I was a complete buffoon and didn't realize that until the end of the movie, and I thought, wow, the green room. Oh,
like the
that's
red
what they were talking about.
Yeah, the room is green.
Well,
Right.
that's like on theaters and stages and
Yeah.
stuff. The green room is like where the musicians go and
Right,
get
the
to
waiting
hang out
room.
before
Exactly.
the show or
Exactly.
whatever.
Yep,
So
staging area.
No, and your point is great, though, because that is absolutely true. They keep going back there. They kind of keep getting forced back there. They get panicked and they go back there. And really, it's just because my opinion is that has the one entrance point, which was that door. And so they kept barricading that because they felt some level of safety and understanding of, yep, I know this room, right? Because we spent hours
Right.
here waiting for Patrick Stewart to show up. And so I think that was just where they went because they didn't really know any of the other building or anything else.
nothing.
And the second anything happened, once they got outside that building, they just ran back there. They kind of reminded me of like a cat where, yeah, cat gets scared. Where does he run? Right under that bed every time. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so,
And
but that is
supposedly then
a
they
good
discover that room
point.
under their room, and they
Yeah.
hatch the plan to capture or to attack their attackers.
Mhm.
You know, so it became like a fortress for them.
Yep.
You know, ultimately, and it allowed, in a way, them to turn the tide of the battle. You know, in that room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
did the compound people also know that there was a locked exit point too? There was they found the exit portal from the place that the heroin was being produced or packaged or whatever. Did they know about that thing, or did they
Like
just
downstairs?
Yeah,
I mean?
like
but that was
downstairs.
locked, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't
it was locked, but it was locked from the other side. So
Yeah.
couldn't they have, never mind.
I don't know.
yeah. But Gene, any final thoughts on Green Room?
Green Room. I don't know. I like this movie. Yeah, it's. I don't know. I think Sarah brings up a great point. Like what is horror? You know, we talked about this before, but horror has definitely a lot of elements. It's like movies that have lots of jump scares. You know, that's horror. You know, like the movie Scream. You know, comes to mind. You know, but would this movie fit into horror? Yeah, I think so. It makes you think about a lot of like dark topics. You know, like the human form is manipulated in ways that shouldn't be. So
Yeah, lots of
Yeah.
unease in this film. Of course,
Right.
visual disgust if you're not into gore, because there's one point where this girl takes a box cutter and just slices this. dude's
Yeah,
stomach
Emily,
wide
um,
open.
Yeah,
Kinda
poor-
popped like a balloon.
Mhm.
yeah, poor Worm, right? Or was it Big Justin? I
Big
forget.
Justin.
Big Justin. Yeah. He doesn't
Mhm.
make it by a box cutter.
And so it
From
fits,
Emily.
it fits into the understanding of horror. It is self-identified as a horror thriller on its
Yeah.
its own write-ups, so it believes itself to be horror, and I think it does fit in
Yeah, that's it.
with it. So, Gene, what are we doing next week? Sputnik, finally?
Yeah, let's do Sputnik.
Okay, we're not
Yeah.
going to lie this time. Next week
Yeah,
we're
that
going to
might
do
go for sure
Sputnik.
Sputnik.
And then the following week we're going to do People Under the Stairs with our friend Leighton.
With our friend Leighton.
Yeah,
yes.
he said, "Hey, I want to be on your podcast. I want to do People Under the Stairs."
Yeah, so we're doing that one.
Okay, we will do that.
Not Harry Potter, huh?
No,
No,
well,
Prisoner of
that's,
Azkaban. I watched that last night just
Mhm.
quietly.
Oh,
Yeah, no time for Harry Potter on our little podcast. Although that is a very horrifying film.
No, it's not.
I can't make it through the whole thing. I keep turning it off. So
No,
it's
Harry
scaring the
Potter's
hell out
cool.
of me, but,
My favorite Harry Potter is number 3.
yeah.
But hey, real fast, I think exit point here would be to ask everybody what would be your, in reference to this movie, what would be your desert island band?
Oh,
Roger.
right. And so, well, you already know the answer to that.
Slayer.
Of course.
Sarah.
My desert island band.
Yeah.
Like if I'm stuck on a desert island.
Yeah, with only one album.
Oh, I have to go to the album too?
Well, no, you can do the
Well,
band.
Oh.
You can do a band, but it has to be one.
I think I'd
band.
pick the Eagles.
Eagles. All right, David.
Yeah, I'd probably go insane. So just to help that along, Beatles, White Album.
All right, so
boy.
Beatles. So just Beatles. Okay.
Oh, I thought you said go to the album.
I know
too.
I said album, but one band. So Beatles.
And so, Gene, what are you?
I don't know. I think I would pick anything from Mozart.
Oh, of course he would. Yep, that's our Gene right there. Yeah, so-
I just keep thinking that music is, how old is that music? And it's, you can listen to it. You can listen to it tonight, and it's still good. So yeah,
well,
Desert Island. Yeah.
I say the same thing about Rain and Blood by Slayer. So will that still be rocking it 200 years from now? Absolutely.
No.
Well, you might be walking through whatever Walmart becomes hearing it on the Muzak version, but it'll still be there.
All right.
So
Okay.
anyway, David, Sarah, thanks so
Yeah,
much
thanks
for
for
joining
coming.
us. Have a safe trip back to your homes.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
we will catch you the next time with Sputnik finally.
Sputnik.
All right. Bye-bye.